As we've been reporting, thousands of migrant children are being held by the U.S. government, separated from their parents under a zero-tolerance policy by the Trump administration. But as Wired reports, the process of reuniting these families is long and complicated. Issie Lapowsky co-wrote that story. She's a senior writer from Wired, joins me now on the set. Good to see you. One of the things that comes through in the piece is just how hard it was to figure out how this works, how it's supposed to work. Can you take us through what the process should be when it is working?
Absolutely. The really tough thing is that this is handled by 3 separate government agencies. Government agencies aren't known for being perfectly transparent or even very organized.
Or good at talking to each other.
Exactly. And what became really clear in our reporting was that they would refer us to one agency and then the other, and none of them seemed to have a coherent response to how these kids are being tracked through the system. From the best we could figure out, when the kids and their families are apprehended at the border, Customs and Border Patrol will take a lot of their information, the kid's name, their date of birth, where they're from. And then there's a field where they have the option to add information about their parent. Remember, these kids are being separated. The parents are going to ICE. The kids are going to the Office of Refugee Resettlement. And the only thing linking them is the option of including the parent's record with the kids.
That decision seems to be a deal breaker, whether that parent's alien number makes it into the record of the child. Well, if it does, you're in good shape. If it doesn't, you're in a lot of trouble.
Well, yeah, it can be a problem. And what happens is parents are left to call into this 1-800 number. It's called the drill line, and it's basically a hotline where they can call and give their child's information, and then hopefully the operators there will be able to locate their kids. But remember, all of this is happening at such chaos that if, for instance, the child's date of birth is entered wrong, and you're saying, hey, find my child, her name's Maria, she's 7 years old, this is her date of birth. If it's entered wrong, that kid, it's really hard to find them in the system. So I think what's becoming very apparent is that before this policy was put in place, the systems were not put in place to manage it effectively.
It's very early days. This was only in place for, what, 6 weeks? Right. But the numbers you tell of immigration lawyers, almost no one seems to be finding each other.
Yeah, I spoke with the Texas Civil Rights Project, and they have been going to the courthouse every day interviewing people. They have, as of 2 days ago, interviewed something like 300 parents at the courthouse, and as far as they could tell, none had been reunited with their kids. So those are really scary numbers. And so we already have seen lawsuits where, a mother says she's been separated from her child for about a month now. And so I think that the administration clearly didn't think through how it was going to reunite these families once it separated them.
So for folks that potentially could worry about being separated going forward, the executive order is good news. But for these folks already separated, has anything changed recently with this executive order, and what do they necessarily need to get reunited? Is there an attempt to reunite them?
It's still really unclear. So the Attorney General's counselor held a call with reporters 2 days ago, and he was asked specifically, what does this executive order mean for the families, more than 2,000 of them now, that are currently separated from their kids? He said, I'll have to refer you to DHS and to HHS. And this is the answer we're getting over and over, that the DOJ, Health and Human Services, the Department of Homeland Security not talking to each other, not coming up with a coherent message for the press, for advocates and lawyers, or for families.
One thing I hear in some of this reporting, in just reading the first-hand accounts of immigration folks, is this has been a problem that's existed for a long time with an immigration system that doesn't work the way most Americans would think it does. And I wonder to what extent you heard these stories from immigration reporters, immigration lawyers. And basically what I'm getting at is, long before there was a zero-tolerance policy, there were a lot of families having a hard time at the border for many years.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And what I found is that this system was really set up in 2014 when you had this influx of unaccompanied minors coming across the border. But the difference is these unaccompanied minors were, in a lot of times 16 years old, and they might not have come with much, but they came with a phone number, and that phone number usually led to whoever they wanted to get linked up to in the United States, and they knew how to contact their parents back home. That's a very different scenario when it's applied to an 8-year-old or a nonverbal toddler who has no way of reaching their family, and whose family is being moved from detention center to detention center. When you try to apply that same model that may have existed long before the zero-tolerance policy to much younger children and families that never expected to be put in this situation, it's a disaster.
Okay. Issie Lapowsky, thanks so much for sharing this important reporting on a very, very complicated story.